the lack of incentive is I guess one of the issues coming in. Like the lack of incentive to actually become a competitive like team, or to actually have the West be driven in a competitive manner, because quite frankly the viewing numbers don't quite like not necessarily match up, like depending on the situation you put yourself in. For example, if you're Fnatic, right, you spend $1 million or whatever or millions of dollars on your team, right? You're obviously gonna win, and that is gonna drive the fan base even further. You know, like so in that case, it's really sad. But for other teams, maybe for someone like Dignitas, you know, they spend millions and they're not really shifting to either direction. They're suddenly like stuck in a position where they're not quite sure what they're doing. They're not quite sure what to do, and they're they're in that flux that you're talking about, where it's like, are we entertaining? Are we competing? And they're doing relatively neither at the end of it.
That's why it does all loop back to who are the people hiring these players, etc. Because at the end of the day, if my general manager signs a player and then has to toss that player completely from being a starter on my top league team within like 4 or 5 weeks, I need to look at whether I need to fire my fucking general manager. Like, what? Yeah. He's the one who's now replacing him with a guy who he didn't even choose. Remember, when he puts that academy player in, he didn't want that guy as his starter. He's on his second option already 5 weeks in. Like, it's actually not the 2 players I should be looking at now. It should be the fucking guy who's putting them in. You know, that's where the box should start to stop. And then, get ready, guys. Are you ready? This is going to be a crazy... It's like, this must be like taking LSD for people who are like squares in the 50s. Something like, are you ready, NA owners? Because the next layer goes like this. You know what happens if eventually those GMs keep fucking up? You get fired next. That's when your investors need to start looking at you. Because at that point, the buck stops with you. That's the whole point of the hierarchy, is if you set it up correctly, yes, in the short term, there's going to be parts that are going to fuck up. But once you get the right pieces, the whole hierarchy is going to work. Like, the player's going to know his play he's responsible for, but he's not responsible for setting up the team. The coach is going to know, well, I could just set up the team and coach them, but I can't decide who plays on the team. The general manager goes, that's my job, to put people on the team. And the guy who's the boss pays everyone the fucking money. There we go. Let's all do our jobs.
Can't disagree with that one.
It's obviously a lot harder than I just made it sound there, though.
For example, you talk about like laning mechanics have improved, blah blah blah, all the rest of it. Like
macro also improved, but macro is still the biggest gap, and macro and mid.
I think macro got worse, Loco.
Really?
I think that's where the gap widened. Like when I watch all these games. Put it this way, here's what was great about H2K versus Samsung. I know lots of experts, Loco, who aren't idiots, you know. Like for example, I don't consider myself an expert. I'm talking about people who watch all these LCK games. They watch all, like, you know, they have different regions. One watches NA, one watches EU, one watches China, whatever, right? They're not people who, like, haven't seen these teams play. And the reason why a lot of them thought that, like, H2K had a chance. Now, they didn't think H2K was going to win. No one actually believed that, Loco. But some of them thought, like, you know what, maybe they could get, like, 2 games or a game. And the reason why they thought that is because on paper, this argument that you're making now of, like, mechanics has gotten closer, like, macro's not as terrible as it used to be, this all seemed to suggest that, like, H2K should have a chance, actually. I mean, look at their players. They don't really have any bad players on that team, you know. They have some pretty good Western players.
They had one of the worst matchups versus a Korean team because they're a team with shitty macro, and all Korean teams have really, really good macro and really good rotation.
This is one of my points, Loco. So my point is they'd kind of made up almost all the other gaps you could make up, right? They had pretty good players, pretty solid laning. In fact, I'd even say I still think now some of the H2K players might be better than some of the Samsung players, because Samsung isn't a team, it's like an all-star team, you know. But here's the thing, in terms of macro and like understanding what to do at what point in the game, Samsung like destroyed them. It's no wonder that game wasn't close.
They dumpstered them.
And that game wasn't close, Loco, even with Jankos having almost like perfect like ganks and shit where he was just like, it wasn't even like he can't even have planned some of that shit. It just went better than, and it still was a stop. Wait, I would agree with you on that point, Loco. I mean, I'm agreeing because I also think that's why there's a gap. He's even on pick ban. So before we even got in the server, there's a fucking gap. So here's one of the problems, Loco. I know that what you're saying is correct. Like, for example, you know this story that came out? A lot of people didn't know it till the interview. That it turns out, you know, right, okay, if it was a movie, right, Bengi had the best storyline ever in that semi-final.
Oh yeah, Bengi clutched so hard.
No, but here's the storyline. In the movie, what everyone in the West thought was, wow, what a god. He has secretly practiced this Nidalee pick. He must have a smurf somewhere. He's never played it competitively. And what he knew was, one day I'll need... Right, that's a sick storyline. You know the problem with the storyline, Loco? It's totally false. I mean, Bengi himself said in an interview, like, no, actually what happened was, it was an accident, Coma didn't notice, and then Nidalee was up and we'd done our bans already, so he literally just said, like, we can't give up Nidalee, can you play it? And he just had to play it. And he himself didn't know he'd have a good game on it. Now, the point I'm making here is, That situation would never in a million years happen on the end part. Like, even if the coach said that, I've left it up, now, the Western player would be like, I can't play it. I'm not going to play it. Like, I'm not going to look like a fool on the world stage and in a big match. There's no way the Western player would play it, right?
Probably not. It depends on the player.
Never played a competitive game on the champ. There's no way they'd play it like that, Loco. Come on.
In terms of the infrastructure, if the infrastructure is so amazing, and I made this point before, if the infrastructure in Korea is so amazing, and that's what makes players great, so coaching, the amazing leagues they have, all living in one city, all on the internet, then why is it that you get fantastic players who come through who don't live in Seoul, who aren't in team houses, who've never experienced that coaching, who've never experienced any aspect of the infrastructure? They've just at their home on their PC installed the game, started playing it, or gone to a PC bang near them, PC cafe in their city, played the game, become very good at it, ground their way up, got to Diamond, got to Masters, got to Challenger, been picked up by a team, then gotten into the system. But they've already been fantastic at that point in time. How is that possible? Now, that's one of those areas where the excuses obviously don't all work. There's also the factor that a lot of these things here, in terms of what the Koreans have and what the West doesn't have on many of these areas, China doesn't have a lot of these areas here. They don't have such a great history of coaching that goes back into Brood War and all the rest of it. They don't have that. They don't have that aspect of it. Yet China won MSI. Yet China has had the best team in the world a couple of times. EDG. This one that won MSI. Then before that, there was obviously World Elite years ago. They've had great success. They've made all these world finals. They've made all these top fours at Worlds. They've had fantastic results, better than the West, yet they haven't had some of these advantages Korea had. They haven't had all these extra things that people make out is the only reason why. Secondly, their cultural kind of milieu of this hierarchy of people who are older than you or elders or in a position of authority or above you in your workplace means that naturally the Korean players are more receptive to coaching. They're going to listen to what the coach says. Even the star player can't just disregard his coach. He definitely can't disrespect his coach and tell him, you don't know anything, I'm not going to do that. That was a stupid plan. He definitely can't do any of that stuff, no matter who he is. No matter if he's faker, no matter if he was shy, no matter if he was flame. Doesn't matter who this guy is. He can't do that ever.
And then obviously you can also see it in League of Legends as well, where their core fundamentals of the game are lacking in a macro sense or even in a micro sense, but they'll try to be more innovative than other regions. And you can even see this when games are fresh, like when StarCraft 2 first came out, or when a really big major patch comes out. You'll see innovation come out from NA. They'll be quick to experiment, and they'll look for all these cheesy quick means to an end, sort of obstacles in a route. And I think when you have that going on constantly, and you have these people all striving to be the first to achieve something, or me, it becomes toxic in a way that if the circle continuously keeps going on, it ends up hurting the core aspect of the region.
I can actually give you a good counterexample for that. Like a similar example from another game, which is that in both Counter-Strike and League of Legends, I noticed this is something that was heavily a part of approach of even the top players and teams. So, for example, in Counter-Strike, famously, one of the reasons why, I mean, we only had Europe and North America basically for most of Counter-Strike, and Europeans basically were generally the superior players. And what would happen was, first of all, North Americans almost never had a true practice culture. They would play scrims, but when you played the scrim even, there was ego involved. You were trying to win the scrim, which is something we definitely heard about in the early days of League of Legends. Likewise,
there's a lot more Korean streamers now on Twitch than in the past. They used to be on Afrika, they used to not stream at all. Yes. One of the big things that comes up nowadays is APM between your average Korean League of Legends pro and your average Western pro. And you'll see people on Reddit or even YouTube comments if you go to Faker highlights or you go to Marin highlights or whatever, you watch these top tier players, you'll have these people be like, why are they clicking so much? That's stupid. I watch Bjergsen or I watch so-and-so stream and another Western pro name, and they don't click this much, so it must be okay. And it's just an ignorance to what exactly it goes into refining those core fundamentals. And because I feel like at this point, because I've seen it in StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2, League of Legends now, I assume it's probably the same fucking case in Overwatch or Warcraft or CSGO or whatever. When people are intimidated by superior fundamentals or someone going out of their way to get super small micro edges, they'll choose to just say, oh, well, it doesn't matter that much, or it's not that important. And then they'll completely put it off and deflect it because they don't want to be bothered to learn it.
I actually want to start out by asking both of you. You can go first, Steve. Do you actually think there is a problem with NA? Like, I will say, a lot of it does tend to centre around every time TSM gets eliminated because, listen, they have won championships. They're a fan favourite team. But, like, your team last year was in the MSI final. Jack's team obviously was top 4 at Worlds a couple of years back. Do you actually perceive there to be a problem in this regard? Does LCS have a problem? Does it affect the international scene? Where do you come down on this, mate?
Yeah, I think NA has a problem, for sure. Based on the level of investment that's been made by the league, the teams, the players, we should have more consistent performance on the international stage than what we've been able to demonstrate in years past. We've had a few highlights like the ones that you mentioned. It's just not enough. So yes, there's an issue.
Okay.
There are issues.
Yeah. What about you, Jack? Where do you come down, mate?
There's absolutely an issue in my estimation. And you really see it like right now is a great time to ask, because you see when you're talking to players from Europe and your players from Asia, they're nervous to actually come out here, and sometimes there isn't enough money for you to give them for them to come out because they want to win internationally, and they feel by going to NA like they're selling out, they're just collecting a paycheck. They actually can't compete internationally because the region is so behind. And there's a lot of different places that there needs to be the work to be done, and one of the scariest issues for me that I don't think we can actually impact is the actual player base and the number of people playing ranked here in North America.
That being said, I think the biggest change I saw for the regions was that a lot of Korean players, instead of thinking about coming to NA first, thought about going to China.
Right.
And when that happened, it was I think closer proximity wise, there was like more relationships with agents there. There were also billionaires that were ready to pay big salaries for some of the top talent. And then at the same time, with franchising happening in Korea, there was a requirement for academy programs and to field those teams and to build facilities. And when that happened, then the talent that would have otherwise came to NA ended up just staying in Korea.
Right.
And if they didn't go, and so I think the side effect was that I think you saw less players finding NA desirable, maybe not because of what was happening in NA, but what was more or less happening in China. That's my personal POV, though.
Okay. Where do you come down, Jack?
I think it's really accurate. I think as we've seen the LPL get stronger and stronger, it's become more and more attractive to the top Korean players. So NA wasn't their first pick. And Cloud9, much like what they did at Team Liquid, we have a lot of Korean staff. We know how to really be respectful of the culture of the people that are coming over and make sure they can integrate well with ours. And I think so it's definitely like, I would be happy to have more Korean players, absolutely. But I think we've just seen a lot more competition from other regions. So we're just not the first pick anymore.
In this esports world, it can seem like everyone's against you, but I've always got the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community, riding with me. And it is thanks to the support of the following people, this video and all of them on my channel are made possible. Matt, Pugnatio, Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Frisky, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Toucan, Tobias Bernasconi. If you've ever watched my videos, you know now I'm going to give a massive shout out to Jerky's Minion, the main man. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers? Find out who the upcoming interview guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question. I tend to answer them at length in my video AMA. Do you want to take part in one of those dinner discussions where we talk about what you're interested in esports? Well, if any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below is a Patreon link.